My name is Dr. Samantha Dale Strasser. I'm the Chief Science Officer and co-founder of Pepper Bio and a scientist and engineer by training.
Oh, really? What's your engineering?
So that's an interesting question because it's several. I started out in biomedical engineering and applied mathematics. Also have physics for a master's in the middle, and then my PhD is in electrical engineering and computer science.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
Gosh, that is like all the things that girls are stereotypically assumed not to enjoy.
math and finding order for me was always something that I always really enjoyed. And I think I was in a fortunate spot where I had family that really encouraged me to pursue it. And I loved it ever since. And to me, it's bringing in biology is now my goal of bringing some order to in some ways, the mess that still is biology that we're trying to figure out how it works. So,
Wow. Yeah. Actually, let me let that land for a bit, because maths, the reason why I ended up loving maths is because it is just so logical and so kind of orderly. And you're right, biology is like total chaos. How are you bringing them together?
It's so for me, the way that I've seen it in recent years is that there's finally enough data and information that we can actually measure in biology, that we can now start to use the tool sets that we have in mathematics to now understand what's happening and to start to actually bring some complex models to the space, because we have the data to draw from and start to tease out and bring that order. Full disclosure, actually, when I was in high school, I completely avoided biology. As much as I could, I focused on chemistry and math and physics and was like, oh, it's just too much unknowns in that space. Yeah. And eventually came to realize that was part of the beauty, was that there was space to bring new insights to in a really big way, and it affected people at the end of the day. So
what does your work involve? Like, how are you making an impact through your area of STEM?
So big picture, the impact that I see myself making is bringing treatments to complex diseases. So helping patients at the end of the day through new treatment opportunities. The way that the work that I'm doing at Pepper and that I've really built in my career to getting to this point today is doing that is by leveraging that data that I referenced and computation to tease out new biological insights that can lead us to new treatments, and also characterize potential treatments, so drugs and the like, to understand what they're doing, decide, is this a good treatment or a good drug or a good option? And so mathematics and data is a really kind of underpinning across both of those, what happens in disease and what does the drug do, to allow kind of my goal at the end of the day would be, if there's a treatment from insights that I've contributed to that reaches a patient, that I would see that as success. So
are you kind of like the step before artificial intelligence kicks in?
We leverage artificial intelligence. So it's still actually a hybrid of that. So it comes to, a lot of the challenges in the field that we've seen are around, what do we do now with this wealth of data that we have? And so one of the mathematical tool sets that is at our disposal today is artificial intelligence as a way to better understand data and information, especially when it's really complex. I think that's a really fascinating part about mathematics and tool sets that we have today, is they allow us to study and understand patterns that may not be innately visible to, say, just human inspection. And so for me, that's part of why I've loved the field, because it's a way of leveraging a tool set to see something that may be, by our own mind, non-obvious, but by using computation and artificial intelligence, we can tease out new patterns that can lead to new insights.
What's so fascinating about you is this idea that you have studied maths and physics, but also engineering, because throughout my career, I have noticed a real kind of tension between physicists and engineers. Have you experienced that tension, and how have you kind of resolved it?
So I have a lot of friends who are physicists, full disclosure. We're still friends. The tension hasn't affected that. But no, I think what I've seen in my own study and own research, I've almost seen it more as a balance in some ways, and I would say tension, in that physics and math is very focused on how do we get a new process to do something really effectively. And as you kind of trend towards more an experimental side, it looks at kind of further questions on application at times. I think it's a gradient though, right? I think there's different areas that people end up studying. I myself never fell on the more theoretical side of physics or of mathematics. I was more kind of shifted towards application. I have plenty of friends on the theoretical side, and I think we ask different questions, and they're all really important questions. And it's a matter of what, at the end of the day, you want to accomplish. So
I love this idea that physicists and engineers can just get along, because there's so much fruitfulness in that happening.
Oh, we all need each other. I think that's the fun thing to see too, is there's, and I think that's, across the board in a lot of fields, right? There is that tension, but that's part of how we get new insights as well. So I think that's, I revel in it when it happens and try to keep positive perspective on it. So
the whole world of data and health and medicine is just so vast. Like, there's just so much to discover. And, just when you thought that you've discovered something, something else pops up. It's a bit like viruses. They're constantly mutating and outsmarting us. Is there like a section of health and medicine that you really laser focus on?
So the focus that I've taken right now has been focused on how do we leverage the right data to understand complex diseases, and I'll kind of funnel that into a focus. So big picture, there's obviously a lot of diseases where there's really complex signaling that we don't understand how that works. And so historically, over the last 20 years, the genome has been this phenomenal focus, right? Great, amazing piece of information that is, humanity that we can now study and measure. But it's the starting point. It's the instruction set of what can happen. And so my work has focused on essentially how do we better understand the carrying out of that instruction set. So looking at data biologically, that's at molecular actors that are beyond the genome. So looking at proteins, molecular actors that genes tell you how to create a protein. So a protein is what actually carries out biological function. This protein can also further be modified by adding little molecular switches that change what they do. So they can do multiple different things. And so my work, where I've really honed in on, is how do we best study this functional end of biological signaling and integrate that with our understanding of data sets such as the genome. And the reason that ends up bringing us new insights biologically is a lot of diseases such as cancer and neurodegenerative diseases. We've already seen the implications of these kind of functional switches playing a role, but we don't quite know exactly how to tease out the implications of that. And so right now, the work that I'm doing is focusing on how to best understand this more functional data of biology and apply that to complex disease such as oncology, neurodegenerative diseases, and also inflammatory. It sounds like a big space, and we've at Pepper actually narrowed this to really focusing in on our own drug pipeline within oncology to have our starting point of where we can bring the technology that we're building to reach patients and to find new insights. But it's this really functional understanding that brings a lot of new context to how we understand disease.
Wow, that's just so badass.
Oh, thank you.
Just, and to hear you describe it so articulately, it's really magnificent and inspiring to hear you talk about your work. There's often like a kind of distance between people who are in STEM and kind of just the regular human being, and do you ever find yourself in that halfway house between being this badass engineer, mathematician, physicist, biologist, and just being a regular human who cares about their health and has loved ones that maybe have compromised health. Like, do you ever have that kind of dual kind of existential reflection?
Yeah, I guess I've never really felt it as being two separate parts. I think for me, the science and how I approach questions and understanding the world to me is a part of who I am at my core. So for me, I don't know, I guess I haven't actually seen a distinction between them. I think also for humanity as a whole, we all have different things that we enjoy and that puzzle us and that we focus on. And for me, that happens to be that kind of amalgam of those different fields you described towards the applications we've talked about. But I don't see that as really a separate for me. I think it fuels, it's a part of who I am. Like if I come home, I talk about what I'm doing with people I care about. People I care about and what I've experienced has motivated what I do. But I guess on the first half, I don't really see it as separate. And I think sometimes I also feel that talking to people in different fields, it's actually great to learn new questions and ways of approaching things. I think talking to people and getting insights is something that I've continually been reinforcing how important that is to me in terms of getting new understandings. And sometimes people outside of a traditional STEM technical field, because there's an infinite number of ways we can approach the world and how we're here as humans. And I think that's a remarkable thing of learning from people. But I guess kind of framing a part of what I said in terms of how family and the like has really motivated what I do in many ways. For me, kind of that goal of impacting patients was really an evolution over time that actually came from seeing the other side of healthcare when the industry fails patients in many ways. Mm-hmm. And so for me, when I was actually starting grad school, I had always loved the science and the questions and the puzzle, as I've talked about it, right? Of going after how do we find new insights in biology with all this complex data. But hadn't quite as acutely felt the human need for some of the insights that we needed at the end of the day for patients. Until early on in grad school, my father was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. And I had no idea what that disease was until that doctor's appointment, and very swiftly learned the realities that so many people today still face and their family members still face of when there's no treatments and you're sent home. And that for me really focused of what for me as a person, the impact that I wanted to have on the world was to see a way of changing someone else's future, to not have that answer when they go to the doctor, to not rely on, in many ways, that luck that hopefully the field has something for their ailment. And so in that ways, I guess was where it kind of comes full circle of that's now motivated why I've carried out the research that I've been studying, why I've founded the company that I'm at today, is to aim to solve that. So it really, a lot of ways, that personal life experience motivates what I'm doing on the technical side and vice versa in many ways. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, it's for someone who has accomplished so much and been driven so passionately to get to where you are. There's always such a deeper motivation, and I can really sense your authentic need to really make a difference, and that's incredible. As I listen to you and kind of see you there on the screen, I do find your persona just really aspirational, in the sense that you're clearly really academic and really trailblazing in the STEM arena. but you don't look like a stereotypical STEM person. And I say this through sort of a bit of sort of like a cringe moment, because I would love to see more people like you in STEM, but the reality is that you are in a minority, particularly in physics. And so how have you sort of navigated that?
I think a lot of it, I mean, I guess two facets. One, I know I owe so much to the people that have come before me. I feel that I've been in a very privileged position in many ways to have the ability to not feel singled out as a girl in what historically was a male dominated area. And a lot of that's because women before me stood up and went to school as the sole female in their class and did something that I can only begin to imagine how must have felt. And I just perpetually thank that came before me and that people had the courage to do that. Because I am in a spot where I haven't felt singled out very often, if at all. My parents were very supportive. My teachers were very supportive. My classmates were very supportive. In some ways, whenever, people asked what it was like as a female engineer, I'm like, well, there's other female engineers. We're here, we're doing our thing, we're achieving our, goals. And I feel fortunate that it rarely occurred to me that distinction of being in a male dominated area, which I think is a testament to those that came before. But I do know I'm definitely, many people, they don't feel that still. And so that's something that I hope as a leader in the field and as someone who's pushing towards a goal in the area, that I can inspire other people to hopefully feel that same ability to make an impact in the space. I don't know if that quite answered your question.
Doesn't sound like you've had much resistance.
Sorry?
It doesn't sound like you've had much resistance.
I hadn't experienced something that was very acute in that way. I mean, I think I do look at, ways that I can sometimes I think overcome some of my own challenges, right? I know for myself, I can often be too humble, or I can often be more self-deprecating than I need to be. So I consistently think of, okay, what are ways of framing a question or framing something that's like my other colleagues would, that can, be in a position of strength. So I think some of it's my own internal growth to take that leadership and to ask for what I need and to feel permission to do that. I've debated how much of that is from societal's implications sometimes, but I think, for new people coming into the space, that find mentors who support you. That's something where I was also really appreciative of since early on in school, and thinking of mentors that I had in, throughout my education has been incredible. I will admit there are fewer female mentors than male mentors. So that is something that I do think I'm looking forward to seeing change, to have more female role models for people such as myself and those coming after me to look up to, and to see their life experience and to see themselves reflected in that role model. But I've felt very fortunate, and then again, kind of really admiring those that came before me that helped to pave the way to make that difference. But I know that my experience is not universal still, which is where there's still work to be done to help to change that tide and consistently still push for that balance that we need to have in the field. I've talked to many people, especially in theoretical physics, who have had very different experiences than my own, and it's challenging. And it's something where, avenues such as this to share and talk with people about it are phenomenal, because it's a way that we can start to learn what experiences are and know there's a support group out there as well. So
you have such a calm, collected kind of vibe. And, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, we don't need to have any problems. Like, well, I think when you have a very confident, a confident kind of attitude towards life. You almost just like a force field, kind of, negativity just bounces off. You know,
that's my goal. Sometimes most of the time it's effective, not always, but yeah, it's the goal.
You do give off that.
Thank you.
Kind of energy where I can't imagine someone like you ever going into self-doubt or having
this means my goals are working, because that does happen.
Yeah.
It does, yeah. And it makes me smile that some of this helps me see that, because I do have a lot of personal self-talk internally to still, and sometimes if there is self-doubt, to work past that and to be confident and to say, no, there's another side to how I could look at this situation, and let's pick the positive one, because I'm the best advocate for myself. and let's make sure that I can put that positive perspective forward. So it really humbles me to hear that that's what you're observing, because I would say there's a lot for me that's growth towards also, bringing that confidence there, and from the support of others to also, finding people that are my own champions and that are encouraging is another huge facet to it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a theme that I have noticed amongst confident women is actually the strength to admit that sometimes they're not confident. I think that gives you confidence, because to say, oh yeah, I have moments where I'm really questioning what I'm doing and not really too sure of my path and things like that, I think is very empowering. And the reason why I am sort of like digging at this topic a little bit is because, women are not incapable of doing STEM subjects, of taking physics, of taking maths, but they don't do it because of self-doubt. And sometimes it can be so massive in their head that it actually prevents them from making progress. Whereas you may have had those thoughts, but you have gone past them and not let them hold you back. Just seeing someone actually doing that, like as in having that approach, is really inspiring, because there are many times I have self-doubt.
Well, it's a very human facet in some ways, right? Men, women, human, I think, in general. And I think given the fields in STEM fields progression, that there's more potential just bias that women may have more self-doubt, just given the lack of role models over time. But it's a very human facet is what I remind myself of now and then, having doubt, and we move past it. And how do you think of overcoming it, out of curiosity?
I have done a lot of self-introspection. Yeah. And I now see that a lot of my self-doubt comes from outdated narratives. For example, being a woman of color, I think I kind of grew up thinking that I was always somehow disadvantaged for having darker skin. And that may or may not be the case, but it doesn't help me to drag that kind of assumption around. If I'm in a situation where perhaps my color is affecting an opportunity, then I put in more effort to make sure that it isn't something that holds me back. And just having that kind of realistic perspective that sometimes, as someone who is underrepresented, I don't have to be in victim mode over that.
Yeah, because it's not a facet of it. You can make your decisions and move forward. And it is interesting when society has, like you said, outdated narratives that are still a part of, for whichever reason, the dialogue in some areas, or even just an implicit implication at some point. but yeah, that self-internal dialogue to move beyond and to acknowledge, no, this is not relevant. This is not something that needs to be internalized, and to acknowledge setting it aside, which isn't always easy, but is important.
But you exude that because, you know, when you talked about, you know, I've done physics, I've done engineering, I've done chemistry, there is no air about you that doesn't feel like you don't have a right to have done those things, and to be running your own business, and, you know, and so the questioning of, should she be there? Should she have done physics? Should she, like, it's just off the table, because you're just so like confident in the fact that you've done that and you really enjoy it, and you can tell that you're passionate about it. And so that whole discussion is just a non-discussion.
That's good, because that's my goal. That is. And I think as women, I think we need that to be there, right? Because that can show, no, look, we belong here at the table. And we're very capable, and we can bring immense value as a team of men and women, and you know, people together as people on the planet. And I think that's, I somewhat credit my parents to having this people on the planet perspective since I was small. I think that's something that for me also just helped internalize that, is we're all humans. We're here on the planet to make change and to work together and to do what we're excited about. And it was never about skin color or race or gender. It was about doing something for humanity on the planet.
Yes.
And so I give immense credit to my mom and dad for that, as I think that foundation definitely influences my internal narrative. So I probably don't acknowledge often enough how much that's a foundation that's been huge.
And not just a foundation for us as individuals, but I think corporations.
You need
because
that.
I think when you stay focused on the greater good, the kind of the larger purpose of something, everything else falls into place. Like, even when we were talking about collaboration and your friends who are physicists and you're an engineer, it's like when you have your eyes set on the bigger goal, it doesn't actually matter the labels, the finicky details. It's like, let's just all collaborate on this.
Right. We want to get something really exciting done, and they're hard problems. And so let's figure it out. Let's keep our impact and focus of where we want to go, and let's make it happen. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, I've had discussions on this podcast about the gender debate, and I've had some women say, I am tired of talking about being female. I'm tired of like talking about the numbers. I just want to be recognized for the work that I'm doing. And I would love to get to a point where we are literally just talking about the work and the progress and the advancement.
It's funny. I often think of it as I exist in these two states sometimes, because one, I fully agree with the sentiment that at some point it's like, the more we talk about it, the more I feel like there's a divide and a difference, because we have to keep talking about the narrative. But at the same front, on the other end of the spectrum, I am aware there are still challenges for many people. And so oftentimes the ways that we can help to change that is to talk about it. And so I think it is an interesting spot today because of those two areas. And I land on, we still need to have the dialogue because we're not there yet. But we do have to be cognizant of how we hold it, because it can sometimes, I think, bring us into a narrative and a mindset that maybe, you know, creates a divide. So I think it's interesting in its own right, because I do agree there are times when I'd say, yes, I'm a female. This is something that exists. So let's move on. But it's still, we're in a world where we haven't accomplished everything yet in terms of how we want to bring balance to an area that historically was not. And yeah, it's interesting.
Actually, on that note, whilst clearly between the two of us, we are very much kind of, well, we're in quite a clear space of knowing what it is we want for our own lives, and we have a clear sense of our purpose. But kind of being in society, how are you experiencing being a woman in science, in the sense that a woman has very multi-dimensions. You know, you can be a mother, you can be a career woman, you can be a wife, you can be like all these different roles. How does a career in STEM support all of those roles of a woman?
I mean, I think as a whole, it ends up being very different for different people, because even in STEM, there's different career paths. I think as a whole, from what I've personally felt, and also from colleagues of, you know, their experience, I think it's been very supportive of that. I think my favorite example is a grad student that I'd known was, you know, going out for a job while pregnant and was hired while pregnant, which I always just found, for the state of the field, was phenomenal, because it's saying they knew her skill set, they knew the value she was going to bring, they knew the time of life for that family, and that was okay. And to me, that was a single anecdote, but a sign of this, there is change that's happening. And we are getting to a point where we can have big life changes alongside big career changes and feel supported by the company and the place that we're moving to. It's not everywhere, right? I think that's part of, again, the acknowledgement of, we still need to, you know, work to make changes as a society. But from that, and even from my own experiences of opportunities that could be there, I think it is supportive in that. I think in some ways there's, again, different fields that support that very differently. And I know, depending on the path, I've heard contrasting stories from people who, you know, on a academic route with the pressure to publish, have felt that's different. But for me, I've not felt dramatically pressured for life decisions as a result of my career path. I think, you know, for new people considering options of what they want to do and how to balance, you know, different facets of their life, career, personal life, the like, I think it's talking to people who walked through that door and see what are the experiences that they've had, and at least walk in knowing what those decisions are. I think for me, I think one that stands out is being a grad student versus going to get a career in industry has a different financial implication, which I knew going in. I was excited about the kind of learnings and technical skill sets that I would gain in that experience, and knew with, you know, open eyes what I was walking into there. So I think a lot of it is just be aware of what is important to each individual, which is distinct and very bespoke in many ways. And look to what are the implications of that decision from what others have experienced.
Yeah, you know, in everything you've said, there's a really clear message, which is that it's really important to have a strong sense of what you want out of your life. I just get this really strong, clear message that knowing who you are, your purpose, your kind of calling, where you are meant to be applying your skills and your talents and your passions is really what leads to the smoothest forward path, because, you know, life always throws curveballs, but like,
yeah,
you know, just knowing who you are, I think, is really essential.
Well, I think I would add to that, though, is say knowing who you are, and if there are questions you still have, of acknowledging that and talking to people, because I think I mean, I hadn't always known the exact direction I wanted to go next. I think all is easy in hindsight, right? We look back and go, oh, this all made sense. But I think, you know, there were a lot of questions along the way in grad school or before grad school. Did I want to go to grad school, right? And I think a lot of those questions, when there was that gap, is acknowledging, okay, I don't know. Why don't I know? Because I don't know what that really means. So then finding people to talk to them and to see, okay, what is going to grad school, you know, potentially lead to next, versus if I went to industry, if those were the two options one's balancing. So I guess I would add on, if there are questions, that's okay, and to then ask those, acknowledge them, and talk to people, because I think, you know, I can look back and say it all was this really smooth path, but certainly there were questions along the way and things that I didn't know, and I took a leap, and I'm happy with them because it's landed me to where I am today. But certainly there's often forks in the road that both are good options. And I picked a path and I've been very happy with where that's gone.
So what does the future hold for you?
So for me, continuing to grow Pepper. So we've started operations in 2020. We're a few years old now. And a team of, just under 10 people. We're looking to continually grow the company and to build our own, a company as a drug discovery company. So the world's first transomics company with a computational core of what new value we can bring, coupled with our own drug pipeline to really reach that big picture goal of treating patients at the end of the day. And so for me, that future means, staying, building that company itself and the team and the people surrounding that, while also enjoying my time here in Boston with friends and family. I'm very close with my mom, so spending lots of time with her as we, continue. And yeah.
Gosh, I was just in Boston. I'm like,
really?
Face to face.
Well, if you come back, let me know. I
will. Absolutely. So. That just sounds like so. I don't know. It's you just seem very at peace with what you're doing, and what you're doing is so important. I guess my final question for you is, how dependent are you on new technological advances? Because when you're talking about drug discovery and all of the data you must be handling, I'm thinking, gosh, quantum computing would really help, right?
I have friends at a quantum computing company, and I keep telling them I want to be on your short list for when we can deploy the technology for drug discovery. But no, absolutely, new technologies are part of what I love about being in this field. Is it's rapidly evolving, both on the biological side, on the data that we can access, on the model systems that are present, and on even on the technology side, like you mentioned, quantum computing and new abilities to eventually use computers in more advanced ways. I think everyone's now talking about ChatGPT and the like, and what's there too, right? There's a lot of new ways of how we process and handle information that I'm excited for us and others to bring to the field. It's part of why I've loved delving into this. Is it's never dull, right? There's always something new to understand and to learn, and I'm excited for what we can do in the future. Well,
I'm excited about what you can do for us and what you are doing for us right now. Dr. Strasser, thank you so much for sharing your cool with us. I mean, I just feel so calm just listening to you, and you really have such an inspirational energy, because you embody someone who is just really applying what they are truly good at to do good in the world. And thank you so much for sharing that with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for a great conversation. This was a lot of fun. So thank you for the dialogue.